So two broadcasts separated by just 30 minutes with same presenter and the same platform. Would you be blamed for expecting consistency from the presenter and the news organization that she works for? Yes, you would. If the channel in question happens to be the BBC and presenter in question happens to be Annita Mcveigh. Annita has been with the BBC for as long as I can remember, even during my time at the BBC. She hails from Northern Ireland and she was recently in the news for mounting a legal action against the BBC for not being paid adequately. She was joined by Martin Croxall, who too has grabbed the media spotlight lately for her questionable broadcast on the Israeli-Palestine conflict.
So you have these Israeli policymakers essentially enforcing a genocide just couple of dozen kilometers west of the West Bank, and at the same time saying, oh, this is abhorrent, or we condemn this act. And again, you need to remember that these settlers are part of the Israeli system, that the Israeli government has placed them illegally in the West Bank as part of the annexation. Now, the condemnation from Israeli policymakers comes from the strategy within the Israeli military, and that is called perception shaping. And it is a policy that they enforce in order to maintain a image of being a moral army or being a regime that values human life and values legal regulation.
I just must go back to a word that you used a moment ago. It is a fact that many international members of the international community regard these settlements as illegal, but you just used the word genocide. Is that in relation to what's happening in the West Bank? Are you really using that word?
So I'm speaking about the genocide that is happening in Gaza. Now, what is happening in Palestine, and you need to remember, Gaza is not a separate entity from Palestine, which seems to be the trend in media. Israel is enforcing spatiocide, and that includes the annexation of territory and the depopulation of villages. In the West Bank, we have witnessed an unprecedented rate of Israeli settler annexation of Palestinian lands and actual depopulation of towns and areas within the West Bank. So that does fall within the overall Israeli strategy of ethnic cleansing. And if that word makes you uncomfortable, I recommend that you go and actually see what ethnic cleansing means, because Israel has de facto implemented every part of what that phrase entails.
Well, of course,
so yes, I do place it in that same category.
Well, of course, Israel would deny that completely, and even members
Absolutely.
of the international community would challenge some of what you've just said. What is the mood? What is the anticipation, though, in the West Bank of what might happen next, and how is the temperature lowered? Just briefly, if you would.
Of course, Israel would refute that, and parts of the international community. Like I said, this is part of Israel's perception shaping strategy.
Can we move on to the question? The question. Sorry, Mariam,
my question
my question is: what's the anticipation in the West Bank of what might happen next, and what needs to happen to bring the temperature down?
Right. So the anticipation in the West Bank is part of how you just responded to me. So Palestinians are expecting, especially international media correspondents, to devalue what is happening here and semi-legitimize it.
I didn't do that at all. I'm sorry, Mariam Marguerite, I did not do that at all. I did not do that at all. I'm asking you to tell me what the anticipation is. I'm asking you to tell me what the mood is and the anticipation is of Palestinians in the West Bank. That isn't devaluing anything that has happened at all. And we have just reported that the British Foreign Secretary has condemned the settler violence. Please answer my question.
As I said, perception shaping. You can go back to this interview and see how you devalued it.
Annita is now facing social media roasting for her broadcast on 29th of August. She was presenting Verified Live for the BBC. In one bulletin, she interviewed Avi Malmed, a former Israeli Armed Forces member and now a so-called expert on the Middle East. The man is a regular guest on the BBC and his program Verified Live, which is usually presented by Matthew Amroliwala. He appeared again on Verified Live on 29th of August as Israel intensified its genocidal campaign in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Also appearing on BBC Verified Live on 29th of August was Palestinian-American scholar Dalal Iriqat. The presenter, Annita Mcveigh, launched the program on a good note by describing the West Bank as the occupied territory.
Hello, I'm Annita Mcveigh and welcome to Verified Live, 3 hours of checking out the day's main stories and the facts behind them. Palestinian sources say the number of people killed in the occupied West Bank since Israel launched a large military operation there has risen to 17.
However, it's how she treated both the guests at the end of the interviews which is earning her widespread condemnation, and rightly so. While ending her interview with the Israeli guest, she bids him goodbye with a respect that you would accord to your guest if you happen to be a journalist. However, where she miserably failed was when it came to according the same respect and courtesy to the Palestinian guest. To insult her publicly, she started reading out a standard line which sought to negate everything that her guest would have said on the program. This was the Israeli version, which other BBC presenters such as Martin Croxall too have been very nimble-footed in repeating lately. Well done to Twitter user Saul Staniforth for capturing this latest episode of BBC Bias on Twitter.
Avi Melamed, former Israeli intelligence official, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Dalal Iriqat, thank you very much for your time. And of course, a reminder that Israel would deny that it is carrying out war crimes in this situation. Dalal Iriqat, Associate Professor of Conflict Resolution and Diplomacy at the Arab American University.
It was as if the BBC kept these presenters in a bunker, depriving them from accessing the goings-on in the Middle East. This could be the only reason why they don't appear to be moved by the Israeli brutalities in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. I can't think of any other reason. How many more babies' heads these presenters want blown off so that they can start agreeing with their Palestinian guests that Israeli terrorists are indeed carrying out genocide in Gaza and the occupied West Bank? Are they indeed so thick? Or they simply don't care about the brutalities being committed against Palestinians? What kind of human beings wouldn't get moved by the goings-on in Gaza and the occupied West Bank? I would worry about being the next-door neighbor to people who have such flippancy towards genocide and human sufferings and slaughtering of innocent men, women, children, and babies. Anyway, that's it from me. If you are concerned about the BBC biases, you can complain to the watchdog Ofcom. Details are in the description. Just so you know, I am forever grateful to all of you for your support on buymecoffee.com. If you think that my journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider buying me a coffee. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.